Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Damme and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today I want to tell you about 20 totally twisted movies you can currently watch on Netflix. So this list is going to be a mix. It's going to be thrillers and horror, a little bit less on the horror side, only because I do so many horror videos. I'll link to my most recent ones in the description below, but all of these movies are super twisted. This video is being posted in February 2020. If you're from the future and these movies are no longer available to you, or you're from another country and they're not available to you, you're gonna wanna pay attention to today's sponsor, Cyberghost VPN. I'll tell you more about how they can help you watch more movies on Netflix later in this video. But let's go ahead and start with my number 20 pick, which is actually not a movie. I'm kind of breaking tradition here and going with a mini series that was a true crime series called Don't Fuck with Cats. Only recently added to Netflix, this series follows a true crime story about a bunch of internet sleuths that found an animal cruelty video on YouTube back before YouTube knew how to sort of auto-catch some of that stuff. And they began to investigate and try to figure out who this person was. Now, fair warning, this is a very, very dark docu-series. It does have some pretty brutal imagery that centers around cruelty to animals. The filmmakers don't show you everything, but they certainly show you enough to get you invested. I think animal lovers are gonna really enjoy this ride, but you do have to see some pretty brutal stuff. So fair warning there, but it ultimately turns into this literal cat and mouse chase for a potential murderer. That's a little bit of a giveaway, but you need to know that because it is the hook. That is what really makes this fantastic. And it's only 3 episodes. They're all great. I was glued to my seat, could not get enough of this one. I've really liked a lot of the ones that Netflix has done recently, but this is one of the best ones that I've seen. Maybe second to The Staircase. All right, now while I really did like that, it's all the way at the back just because it's not a movie and it didn't feel fair to sort of judge it against other movies. But my number 19 pick is an Eli Roth movie. It's The Green Inferno. Now, I recently did a list of disturbing movies and this one got left off, and I'll just admit I missed it, completely forgot it off of the list, but there's a link to that video in the description. But The Green Inferno is not for everyone for a couple of reasons. One, it's very graphic. This is cannibals in the Amazon, it's bloody, it's gruesome, it's in your face, but it's also an Eli Roth movie. And his movies have a very weird flavor. They're sort of their own animal. This one's kind of like his take on Cannibal Holocaust, which has been like kind of the long-running, grossest, goriest movie ever made. And his take is maybe not as good or won't be as revered as the original Cannibal Holocaust. It's kind of got a weird tone, like I said, so it's not for everybody. But if you're in the mood for just something brutal, in your face, and very gruesome and pretty intense, The Green Inferno is a good way to go. That doesn't necessarily make it a good movie, but it is a good recommendation on this list. I know that's confusing to some of you. Mute is a Netflix original that I really anticipated last year. It's a cyberpunk thing. If you love Altered Carbon, which season 2 is just about to drop on Netflix, Mute is kind of a good companion, although I think it's not as good. This is actually directed by the same director of Moon, which is also on Netflix currently and is a really, really fantastic movie. In fact, there's a little bit of a crossover here with Mute, and it's actually directed by the son of David Bowie. Fairly irrelevant in my opinion. And this one, to me, the story got a little muddy. There was a little bit too much going on. However, the cyberpunk universe that it's in is really fantastic. And for someone who, I have no problem with Paul Rudd. I've just never really cared too much about him outside of Anchorman. Kind of lukewarm on Paul Rudd. I think he killed it in Mute. I was very surprised by the character that he played. Very dynamic, interesting character. And a lot of the other cast members do a great job as well, but I was really surprised by Paul Rudd. That alone is enough reason to watch Mute, but it's also just kind of a fun cyberpunk thing that's got a very sort of twisted underbelly to it that if I say anything on it, it's gonna give it away, but just know by it being on this list, there's some dark stuff wrapped up in this movie. My number 17 pick is Only God Forgives. This one was highly anticipated because it was director Nicholas Winding Refn's first movie after Drive, which was a huge success for a bunch of reasons. Mostly, a very wide audience loved and appreciated that movie. Not the case with Only God Forgives. This is a very niche movie. It's very odd in its tone, but ultimately it's very metaphorical and doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you're not following him. If you're not following Nicholas Winding Refn in his vision and you don't get on board early with it, and it's very easy to miss, it's just kind of a weird mess of a movie. But if you lock into what he's doing and sort of what the metaphor is, it makes for a very interesting story. Ryan Gosling's doing his quiet man thing again, but it works here. The colors are amazing in this. Just a beautiful vibe to this one. If you love the vibe of Drive, you at least like the way this movie looks, but it is nothing like Drive, so be prepared for that. My number 16 pick, 13 Sins, is easily the lowest budget movie I've talked about so far, and it works out pretty well. So with this one, I'll actually tell you what's going on, because this is the setup. This is what they give you in the advertisements, in the trailers. It's about a guy who gets this offer over the phone, and basically, if he does what they tell him on the phone, money is directly deposited into his bank account, he can see it, and it starts off as pretty innocuous stuff. Kill the fly in the car. But things become more and more unreasonable, and the story does a very good job of sort of locking this character in, where he sort of can't escape this nightmare, and he's having to do wilder and wilder and darker things. And again, I think it plays out well. Again, low budget movie, but really well executed, and for what they were trying to do, I think they totally accomplished it. One of the very few musicals I've ever talked about on this channel, Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. I just don't identify with musicals. There's only a handful I've ever liked in my life. This happens to be one of them. I was actually surprised at how much I liked it. I've also not been a big fan of things that Tim Burton has been doing in the last, I'll just even say, in the 21st century. I haven't liked much of it. Sweeney Todd's an exception. I feel like the story works well. I feel like the production design is, well, the production design is always great with Tim Burton. This one is a little more subtle, like by a little bit, than a lot of his other stuff, and I think that works. I think Johnny Depp is really fantastic here. I think Helena Bonham Carter is fantastic, maybe even better than Depp. Everybody in it I love, and the music's good and ultimately serves the story, and it gets dark and gritty and feels like classic literature to me, which I really like that aspect as well. So if you never gave this one the time of day, you're like me, you just don't click with musicals, this one would be worth giving at least 20 minutes to see if you're into it.
I'm never gonna find her.
You can find things, but it's easier once they're dead.
Another Netflix original at number 14, Within the Tall Grass. I did not get around to doing a full review on this movie. I wanted to, but here's the breakdown. I ultimately enjoyed it. I think it reaches for the brass ring, and it just misses, but I'm okay with that. I'd rather a story like this reach and come close than to not reach at all or to completely miss it. And In the Tall Grass, again, it really went for something wild, and it only just fell short. However, I thought the cast was fantastic. I thought the setting was good. The movie looks really good, and it's fairly well executed. The story's just a little weird, and if you don't know, this is actually written by Stephen King and his son. And basically, you get this field of this tall grass, and once people go into it, they kind of get lost, and not only do they get lost, but things start happening, and time doesn't work the way that it should, and it gets just wilder and wilder, and you basically just keep going down this rabbit hole. I enjoyed the journey of In the Tall Grass a lot more than I ultimately enjoyed the movie itself. Still, just a great effort for a Netflix original horror movie that is pretty ambitious in terms of its concept.
Somebody talk to me! Who is out there?
Be quiet. Be quiet or he'll kill you.
Oh my God.
Kiss the Girls is a really great murder mystery starring Morgan Freeman and Ashley Judd from the mid-90s. Obviously, great performances from everybody, but just a really thrilling story and a very memorable and epic story. It's not just like, oh, somebody got murdered, we're gonna figure out what happened here. And another one where I shouldn't say too much more, but I remember the first time I saw this movie and how surprised I was at where the story was going and how much it was progressing. Very, very good stuff, very robust in terms of how much is crammed into this movie. And whereas that doesn't always work, I think it works really well with Kiss the Girls. Again, just one of those great classic 90s thrillers that's got a really dark slant to it. One of the weirdest ones on this list, and there are some really weird ones on this list, is Enemy, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. This one is very, very loosely based on The Double, and Fight Club is very, very loosely based on that. There's also a movie very directly based on The Double starring Jesse Eisenberg. Enemy came out around the same time as that movie, and it's completely different. This is actually directed by Denis Villeneuve, who's most famous for Arrival, Sicario, Blade Runner 2049. He's currently working on the new Dune movie, which sounds very, very exciting. But this is a smaller movie he sort of did, sort of in the middle of some of those, and I like it, but it's not for everyone because it is so wild and it takes a lot of figuring. I guarantee the first time you see this movie, you're going to say, what the f did I just watch? But for some of you, the more you think about it, the more you're gonna like Enemy, and the more you're probably gonna be interested in rewatching it to try to decode it. I've done it, and believe me, it's not just nonsense. There is enough there for you to decode if you're interested enough to do so. And now, with all the talk this year about Joker and Joaquin Phoenix's performance, another really fantastic performance from him is in The Master. He also stars alongside Philip Seymour Hoffman in one of his last roles, and this is directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. It was actually the first movie he did after There Will Be Blood, which is one of my favorite movies of this century. I had a high expectations for The Master, and ultimately I didn't love it nearly as much because I'm not as big a fan of sort of the subject matter, but the cinematography is incredible. The performances between the two of those guys is absolutely fantastic. Amy Adams is great in it. The supporting cast with people like Jesse Plemons are all fantastic. It's an incredibly well put together movie, and it's loosely based on Scientology. Philip Seymour Hoffman's character is named something else, but he is very directly based on L. Ron Hubbard, so it's an interesting way to look at that movie as well. I really like this one. It just doesn't compete with something that I love as much as There Will Be Blood. Like I said, if not all of these movies are available in your country, even if you're in the US and these are no longer available, you can access more movies with your current Netflix subscription using Cyberghost VPN, the sponsor of today's video. I have been using it for months. They have been a sponsor for months, and I've been getting great feedback from those of you that have signed up. But in addition to that, Cyberghost keeps your web browsing secure. You can use it on up to 7 devices at once. It works with Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, smart TVs, and other devices. You can pay as low as $275 a month when you use the link in the description. They have a 45-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk, and 24/7 customer support. And again, less than $3 a month when you use the promo link in the description. It's a great deal, especially if you make good use of it. And then again, if you don't, they will give you your money back. They give you a month and a half to determine whether or not you like it. It's really a great service, which is why I've included them on so many videos. I think it pairs very nicely with the type of content I'm trying to bring you. Speaking of that, let's move on to the top 10 on this list. So my number 10 pick is one that I really like a lot. It stars Scarlett Johansson. It's called Under the Skin. Now, this is another one that is not for everybody, but honestly, if you clicked on this video and you want to watch some twisted shit, Under the Skin is a great one. Now, this is a sci-fi movie. The less you know about it, the better, but it is an art film. It's got beautiful cinematography. It's very quiet and slow-paced, but very interesting if you get into it. And also if you know a little bit about the way that they filmed this movie. So Scarlett Johansson, they made her kind of not look like her, brown curly hair, and she's driving around this moving van and she's picking up guys who essentially are victims in the movie, but This was actually done in real life. There's hidden cameras in this van, there's security in the back, and Scarlett Johansson's actually driving around and picking up guys on the street. When you see it in the movie, most of the time it's real, a couple of times they're actors, but sometimes some of the real guys they picked up, they got to sign in and come in and actually film some additional scenes. There is some very wild shots in this movie, really arresting stuff, and it ultimately gets really sort of grim and dark, and it ultimately has some really twisted scenes. This is directed by John Glazer, who has only done a handful of movies, but based on this particular film, they're starting to compare him to directors like Stanley Kubrick. While I wouldn't do that just yet, I do understand where they're coming from. So if you like Stanley Kubrick movies, there's a very good chance you're gonna like Under the Skin. My number 9 pick is a cult classic. I'm sure there are a lot of you watching who would put this one at number 1. I would not, but it still makes the top 10, and that is The Craft. This one oozes 90s. This one was such a big deal. People went nuts for this one back when it came out. You've got a group of teenage girls practicing witchcraft. There's a good chance if you're in your 20s or early 20s, you missed this one. Maybe you've never seen it or don't even know about it. It's a cool flick. It also just has this really cool vibe with the witchcraft thing. I don't know if it's still a thing in high schools, but at the time that this came out in the 90s, there was always like a couple of girls that either looked like they were dabbling in stuff like this or that everyone knew was dabbling in stuff like this. At least where I come from, that was the case. I don't know about you, but this one had sort of a relevant, real thing to it that I think kind of helped it at the time. Again, I'm way out of touch with high school now. I have no idea. I think they're more into musicals now than witchcraft, but still, The Craft is a super cool flick.
I think she's starting to suspect something. Your wife.
Now, I said there's not many horror movies on this list, but this is one, What Lies Beneath. This is actually directed by Robert Zemeckis, who is most famous for Back to the Future and Forrest Gump and a bunch of other really great movies. He's a fantastic director, and he did a great job with the horror movie here. It's a slow burn, but there's a lot happening. It just sort of reveals itself very slowly, and not to mention, it being a great horror movie directed by a great director, it stars Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer. They're both fantastic in it, and it is genuinely creepy. It really has a high creep factor to it. If you like haunted house types of stuff that have minimal but good special effects that are just good and creepy, this is a fantastic one that did really well back when it came out, but time has forgotten it a little bit. So if you've forgotten it or maybe never got around to seeing it, it's a really great horror recommendation off this list. Another horror recommendation that's really sort of a hidden gem is The Blackcoat's Daughter. Now this one's only a couple of years old and it is even creepier, super creepy. Very slow burn on this one. You have to be in the right mood because it's just gonna move at this slow pace, but it's totally appropriate for the story that's being told. And ultimately, this one gave me the willies. This is one of those ones where kind of being alone in a dark house in the days that followed watching this one the first time, I would get a little creeped out. There's a couple of visuals here that were really creepy, and ultimately this one gets very dark and twisted, but it takes time getting there. You gotta be patient with The Blackcoat's Daughter, but if you like those sort of slow burn, dark horror movies, The Blackcoat's Daughter is a great pick.
Don't believe a single word you've said.
You're shivering, Marge. Look at you, Marge. Can I hold you? Will you let me hold you?
Marge?
My number 6 pick is the talented Mr. Ripley. Huge cast on this one. Matt Damon, Jude Law, Gwyneth Paltrow, Philip Seymour Hoffman. This movie actually turned 20 years old just recently, and it's got a very classic vibe. It's sort of based on a classic movie, and they even used Technicolor for it, which really was not done anymore at the time that this movie came out. And it looks like it. It looks like an older movie. And it's a nice sort of fun movie about this guy that's on this like epic lifelong holiday, and Matt Damon's character is sent to bring him back home, and they're having just a blast. And then the movie pivots. It makes this like dark turn, and it never turns back. And I really like that. It feels kind of like Alfred Hitchcock or something. And I'm a big Hitchcock fan. While it's not quite Hitchcock, it's close enough that It's got that flavor mixed in, and I really enjoyed it for that reason. Number 5, John Lithgow in Raising Cain. I love this movie. It's so dark and creepy. There's this dual personality thing happening, and another one where the less I say the better, but this came out in 1992, but for all intents and purposes, it's an 80s movie. It looks and feels like an 80s movie, but it's great. It's been remastered. The look of it on Netflix is good, and this was just added at the very end of the month last month, so no fanfare or anything about it, so you may have missed that they added it. If it's been a while since you've seen it or you've never seen it and you want to watch something dark and twisted, Raising Cain is going to be one of your best bets off of this list. My number 4 pick is ZODIAC, directed by David Fincher, who is one of the best directors at doing dark stories. One of his best movies, of course, being Seven. I was disappointed with ZODIAC when it first came out because I wanted Seven. For some reason, I was young, I was in college, I was stupid. I wanted this movie to be Seven, and it is not. However, it is more expertly executed than Seven. Now, I will say, I like Seven better. I like everything about it more. But ZODIAC is a extremely well-crafted serial killer movie about the Zodiac Killer. There's a lot of different characters played by Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr. in one of his best performances. Not necessarily his most entertaining and most fun to watch performance, but in terms of just his skill as an actor, it's on full display in this movie. I wish he was in the movie more, actually. And if you like the series Mindhunter on Netflix, that is David Fincher at his serial killer best as well. So ZODIAC makes a really great pairing with the Mindhunter series. Number 3 is Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby. Another one, the less you know the better, but I can give it some context. This one broke records when it came out. This was a surprise hit. It came out of nowhere. It made a bunch of careers, and not just Roman Polanski's. Oddly enough, Roman Polanski is now famous for his, indiscretions in Hollywood, but it also made the career of Mia Farrow, who went on to become mother to Ronan Farrow, who is now famous for sort of outing Harvey Weinstein and some other nefarious characters in Hollywood. So it's interesting because it kind of comes full circle, on top of just being this really beautifully done horror movie that's very patient and that's very respectful of the audience. It doesn't play down to you as the audience, so it's very smart in that respect. It takes a long time getting in, but it manages to be interesting throughout, especially if you don't know anything about what happens. That's the best way to watch Rosemary's Baby. And then if you're a fan of Wes Anderson, which I love every Wes Anderson movie, this is and has been his favorite movie of all time. And if you're a big enough fan of Wes Anderson, you can kind of see why. Even though it's very different from anything he does, it has a look to it that is very kind of Wes Anderson in a very surprising kind of way. So there are a lot of things to love about Rosemary's Baby, and one of them does not have to be the criminal behavior of Roman Polanski. Moving on to one of my favorite horror movies of all time, The Evil Dead. Now this is another one. It's got a lot going on behind the scenes. This one launched the career of Sam Raimi. I love the story of how this movie got made. He went to doctors and lawyers and raised roughly $1 million, I think is the number, to make his first movie out of film school, which is The Evil Dead. It launched the career of Bruce Campbell, who is still making stuff today, including an Ash vs. Evil Dead series. Went on to do a whole trilogy, spin-offs, the whole thing. The Evil Dead is fantastic. And then the director Sam Raimi went on to do really great movies like A Simple Plan. He created the original Spider-Man movies, which you could argue have really launched the Marvel universe. And then you get this down and dirty, crazy, wild horror movie that takes place at this cabin out in the woods that gets emulated from that day forward. And it's only superseded by The Evil Dead 2, which is essentially a remake of The Evil Dead with more money. It's wilder, it's crazier. I like it more. But I also love and really appreciate The Evil Dead for what it is. If you've never seen it and you consider yourself to be any kind of fan of horror, this is a rite of passage. Even if you don't end up liking it because of the sort of the low budget nature of it and stuff, it's a learning experience and one that you should have at this point in your life, again, if you are a horror fan. So with all of that gushing out of the way, what could possibly be better than that? How do you top it? How is it more twisted and better? And it's because Event Horizon is currently on Netflix. Now, this movie also has a really great backstory in that it was a budding director. They gave him a ton of money, way more money than they probably should have given a director, given the amount of little experience he had at the time. And he made this crazy, epic sci-fi horror movie that's one of the best ever made. And because it was sort of a box office failure at the time, it killed his career, stopped it dead in his tracks. However, we're left with this really fantastic, dark, very dark, however, not as dark as he wanted it to be, space horror movie. Another one, the less you know the better, but great visuals, great cast, very, very dark direction and subject matter. If you wanted to watch something twisted, this is the one to watch. I put this one in the thumbnail of the video because I know you're gonna ask. Unless YouTube deemed it too controversial, which they do all the time, including the topic of this video they're probably not really gonna like, which is why I need sponsors, which is why I need you to click the like button and comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also want to thank all the Patreon supporters. They allow me to not worry so much about creating content like this. I can create what I want to create for you and not be stuck and be beholden to the YouTube gods, which, you know, are more puritanical than Mormons these days. But I will keep making videos like this one as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special episode, and you will see me on the next one.
Are you sure there's nobody else in the house? Would you like to go upstairs and check? No. Thank you. Thanks for everything. You're welcome.